Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. This is the analysis of the entire Canterbury Tales. Hopefully, you've read all the tales with me, or if you're about to start the tales, you want to take a comprehensive analysis on what to expect. Well, I guess you can read this then with me. But in any case, this is going to cover all the tales and the rich tapestry of what we find. So, let's begin, shall we? What's love got to do with it? Tina Turner belts out this song. Are you familiar with it? If not, you can Google it and listen. The lyrics should actually be read and thought about when we embark on trying to take a look at the whole of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales and gaining an understanding and appreciation of the bulk of his work. This is very important. Each tale offers us insights, but if you were to ask, well, Jimmy, is there a common thread? Is there a common theme that runs throughout these tales? Jimmy would have to tell you, yes, there is. As human beings during that time and as human beings today, that same thread runs throughout our lives. That thread is actually love. And we can learn a lot from this type of investigation into Chaucer's medieval Canterbury Tales, as I intend to show you during this discussion. So, therefore, it's better that you have read the tales. Read this analysis with me, and then go back and reread the tales, and you'll find a much more richer experience. So remember, this is a discussion. You can email me, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, if you disagree or if you want to spin it another way. But don't just be emailing me unless you read the tale. I just don't want anybody, oh, I didn't read it, Jimmy, but it is what I think. None of that stuff. Ready? Here's the lyrics. There's actually only 2 verses in Tina Turner's song, but there's many repeated refrains. Right? The refrains are repeated all the time, and you can see the refrain there. I'm going to just read this briefly. You must understand, though the touch of your hand makes my pulse react, that it's only the thrill of boy meeting girl, opposites attract. It's physical, only logical. You must try to ignore that it means more than that. You see the it there? That's a pronoun, ladies and gentlemen. Now, if you're going to listen to Tina sing it, it's much better than Jimmy reciting it. But sometimes when you recite lyrics, you get a little bit different point of view, right? You must understand. I'm not going to sing it. Listen for it yourself. But here's the refrain. Oh, what's love got to do with it? Got to do with it. What's love but a second-hand emotion? What's love got to do with it? Who needs a heart when a heart can be broken? Think about that lyric. What's love got to do with it? You're going to be asked by Jimmy, what is it? What is it? She calls love a second-hand emotion, and that refrain is repeated over and over and over again in this song. In the second verse, it may seem to you that I am acting confused when you're close to me. If I tend to look dazed, I've read it someplace. I've got cause to be. There's a name for it. There's a phrase that fits. But whatever the reason, you do it for me. Then they repeat the refrain again and again and again. It's a catchy tune. So what is this song about? Well, the highlights are Jimmy, so let's go back for a moment and review the lyrics. Now you can see it, right? Those are all pronouns. Pronouns. You know what a pronoun is, ladies and gentlemen? It's a word that takes the place of a noun. It would be horrible if that word were not used in there, the pronoun it. She's being purposely vague when she sings this. What's love got to do with it? What is it? What is it? Well, the question Tina asked, what does love have to do with it? Is it sex? Is it physical love? Are there different kinds of love? What is love? Ladies and gentlemen, what is love? That's a noun, and I think she's using it as physical sex in this song. What's love got to do with it having sex? Well, Jimmy. Well, what, Jimmy? What? So the Canterbury Tales helps us explore this last question about love, because love is the dominant theme, ladies and gentlemen, in each one of these tales. Well, Jimmy, I started reading with it and I just don't see it. Well, go back and reread it, because I'm telling you. Or if you disagree, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Because there's platonic love, there's physical love, there's spiritual love, and then there's just it. The Miller's Tale, for example, is full of it, right? Not necessarily love, but it. In fact, you can see that adjectives are used to describe love in what I just said, and therein lies the problem with words. Let's talk about this for a moment. Jimmy, you're taking a long way around the bend here. I just want to talk about the Canterbury Tales. Well, we are. We're appreciating them, right? You've read them all with me? Now, if you disagree, you can stop this anytime, but I don't think you should, because that's what this is about. So words are often inadequate to describe feelings, aren't they? They should be words, words, right? They just are. I love hamburgers. I love my wife. Is that the same thing, love? Does love mean the same thing? Nevertheless, love is the main underlying theme you will find in the Canterbury Tales. So it makes sense that if we're going to study these tales, you're really studying love in its various shapes and forms, doesn't it? Doesn't that make sense to you? Marriage is another theme. However, I wanted to focus on love because virtually every tale we've read together, and I hope you read them before you continue with this analysis, please, has a definition of love buried in it. And love is, in fact, one of the primary emotions that guide human beings in our own pilgrimage here on earth. Remember, the pilgrims in the Canterbury Tales, they're on a pilgrimage. Well, I got news for you. We're all on a pilgrimage. You may not know where you're going, but I certainly know you're on a pilgrimage. Besides, marriage is one of the byproducts of love. Not that you need love to get married. Like Turner's song, Jimmy thinks it's better to define what love is before we go looking for it and not be able to recognize it. Right? You know what I'm saying? Knowledge is comparison. Let's start with animals, right? How different are we than dogs or other animals? Oh, Jimmy, what the hell are you talking about? Dogs have 4 legs. We have 2. Do animals love? Of course they do, Jimmy. I don't think so. But it's an important question and complex because we are, after all, animals. And if we're animals and an elephant is an animal, maybe it follows that he thinks and acts just like us. But I don't think so. Do we just follow our animal instincts and call it love? Or because we can reason, do we follow something else called reason? And what has reason got to do with it? Huh? What's reason got to do with it? No, I'm not going to rewrite the song. Ladies and gentlemen, love. There's tens of thousands, probably 1 million songs that contain the word love in the title, the lyrics, and the metadata. The exact number of songs that contain the word love, I don't think it's knowable, even with ChatGPT. But it's safe to say that love is the most sung about topic in the history of recorded music. Would you agree with me? I think you would. Jimmy pulled a list, with the help of AI, of the 25, some of the 25 according to some, the best. I'm not going to read or sing every one of them, but you can pause me now and look. Some of these you may know. Some of you young people never heard of them, but you should know about them. Some of them that are not on this list are on your list. I don't really care, but you should have a list and know that love is a primary topic of songs. All You Need Is Love, they're saying, is the top song about love. Love Me Tender, Crazy Little Thing Called Love, Vision of Love, Love at the Top, blah, 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 blah. The Power of Love, Huey Lewis, great song, Power of Love. Sorry, don't get me started. And so on and so on. But I'm from a different era. I'm a little older than most of you. And from my era, here's the top 25. Love Is Here to Stay by the wonderful Ella Fitzgerald. Love Walked In. Dinah Shore sings that. Love for Sale. Billie Holiday, one of the great, great big band singers. Billie Holiday, ladies and gentlemen. And so on. But again, don't get me started. I'm in the mood for love. Oh, don't get me started. And so on and so on and so on. And then, why am I showing you these lists? Well, love is a many splendid thing. Which is another song, by the way. Love's a many splendid thing. There's also poetry. Poetry, love is the hottest topic in poetry, right? Amores by Ovid, Song of Love. Plato's The Symposium, Ovid. T.S. Eliot, The Love Song of Alfred J. Prufrock. That's a winner. Shakespeare wrote a lot of them. John Donne, one of Jimmy's favorite Renaissance writers. Just a terrific guy. We're going to be reading John Donne on this website, if we haven't done so already. So there's no shortage of attempts to define love. So if you sit down with a pen and paper and you try to define it, maybe you should start with some songs. Maybe you should start with some poetry. But you can pause this and, video and look up some of these if you'd like. In any case, people usually think of love as an emotion. But if you start deep diving into emotions, you say, go to Google, say, what are the main emotions? Most people identify anger, fear, sadness, joy, disgust, and surprise. I don't think so. Are these emotions or are they something else? You notice anytime you say, what are the top emotions, Google, you'll never see love. In fact, some people say they can identify 8 to 27 emotions. Did you know you had that many? I don't think you do. I really don't think you do. So people like to try to make things complex, like life isn't complex enough. In Jimmy's opinion, love is an emotion, not a passion. It's an emotion. It never seems to make these lists. Well, there are two emotions that dominate human beings, according to Jimmy. And they spring from anger, fear, sadness. Those are all revolving around these main two emotions. And those two main emotions are love and hate, which, by the way, are very close together in terms of intensity. If you really love someone and you really hate someone, the intensity of those feelings in a human being, I would say, are pretty close. And they're both explored. By the way, they're both explored in the Canterbury Tales. From tale to tale to tale. Because they're exclusive to human beings. Well, I don't believe that. Dogs get angry. Of course they get angry and they get fearful. And you can think of a dog as having any of the typical emotions I mentioned, anger, right? But not love or hate. Only human beings feel these. And you can disagree. You can disagree. My dog loves me. Oh, I'm going to prove to you he doesn't. He likes you. He certainly wags his tail when he sees you, but he doesn't love you. You may project love and hate into an animal. That's really what you're doing. These two emotions are really reserved for us, human beings. And they are actually what separates us from other animals. Well, a dog can be happy. Well, of course he can, but he can't smile. You can smile. That's reserved for human beings. You can smile when you're not happy. You can smile when you're relieved because the sadness is gone. They come from deep within our consciousness, and that's where reason gets entangled into the feelings. Reason, ladies and gentlemen, reason, the ability to think. To think. To think. In one research project, a professor asked students to do research on humans and their pets. So the students did so. They returned with great papers. Professor reviewed some of them, had some of the students read some, and then he asked a simple question. He says, did you ask the pets anything when you did your research? And the students looked confused. What the hell are you talking about? Pets don't talk. So he made them go back and repeat the research, this time telling them you must ask the pets the questions. And surprisingly to the students, when the pets were asked the questions, something strange happened. The owners answered for the pets. Do you like your food? The student would ask, and the owners would say, I love my kibbles, etc., etc. That, ladies and gentlemen, is projection. Projection is important to not only in humans, but in animals, and it touches on the fundamental and fascinating distinction that sits somewhere between ethics, philosophy, and psychology. Projection. What is projection? It's really the difference between human emotional depth and animal instinctive behavior, especially as it relates to love-hate. So my thesis is love and hate are human emotions, which you see a lot in the Canterbury Tales. There are lots of human emotions, which are love and hate in here. There's the others, anger, fear, jealousy, all those other things. But these love-hate things, these love-hate emotions, they're complex. They're centered in morality. And they're rooted in your self-awareness and your memory. They're distinctly human. Animals behave, but they do not interpret what they're doing. They don't interpret. They don't. After they kill a rabbit, after a wolf kills a rabbit, he doesn't sit there and contemplate, well, let's see. I just killed a rabbit. Did I take another life did I take the life of an animal? They don't do that. We do that. And we do that for them. You understand? In the Canterbury Tales, we see a cast of characters who are emotionally complex in a moral structure because it's medieval, right? England. And there's religion involved in there. There's Jewish in there. There are all sorts of things going on, just like today. There's all sorts of things swirling around us, even worse today because of social media and the internet, right? It's not like, you can just turn on and off today. So this is a powerful thesis that this love-hate thing runs throughout the Canterbury Tales. And I'm going to prove it to you by the end of this analysis that it's true. But you're invited to debate me, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. So let me give you some examples. The Knight's Tale. This is idealized, distant love. You remember the tale? The two knights, Arkwright and Palamon, fall in love with Emily before speaking a word to her. In fact, the whole tale, they don't talk to her till the end. All right? Their love is real. They really feel that from their prison, but it's more abstract. It's not about physical love, is it? Until the end when, the top guy says, well, you got to get married and, the winner of this joust is going to marry her. But it's more about possession, devotion, which is what most people think love is possession. I love this. I love her. I love him. And devotion rather than intimacy. There's not physical. It's not about Tina Turner's It in this tale. And this love lives in a moral structure of honor and courtly duty. You remember, the knight has a courtly duty. And it raises the question, can love be genuine if the object of the love has no agency? In other words, Emily didn't even know about it. She didn't want to get married, but she was forced to by the king, right? Theseus, if I recall correctly. The wife of Bath. This is controlling love. You remember that story? What a great story. She had a great prologue and a great tale. She's been married 5 times. She's got real experience in marriage and love. She doesn't have to read scripture to understand what a woman should be in society. And it's really about control. Control. In her tale, love becomes a question of sovereignty. I'm in command. You remember? What do women want? They want sovereignty. So love can be shaped by power, not just feeling. Not just feeling love, but by power. I control you. Therefore, you must submit. Is that love? The Franklin's Tale, mutual rational love. This is a great story about love. Remember that? Argivus and Dorigen's marriage is built on mutual respect. She makes a promise, however, while he's out fighting. And then he comes back and says, well, you got to keep your word. You promised to sleep with the squire. It's a great story. It's a great story. And there's more. Every one of these. The Reeves Tale is about hate, right? The Partner's Tale is layered with hate. The Prior's Tale is driven by hate, and so on. Love and hate, ladies and gentlemen, very powerful emotions. So Chaucer explores how emotion interacts with social position, belief, and morality. If you grow up in a gang, for example, your ethics, your moral center is different than if you didn't grow up in a gang. You understand that? Do you understand that? You're influenced by your surroundings, by your parents, by other people, by your professors, by the books you read, by the things you do. It's very complex. It's not simple. I wish life was simple. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why you read Canterbury Tales. It's because it's not simple, and Canterbury Tales helps you sort it out. You don't believe me? I hope you read these tales, because that's what they do, and we're going to talk about that. Who to love, who to hate, how to live meaningful in between. You want to live a meaningful life. One more comment on the role of projection. We're born storytellers. We project our inner feelings outward to other people, to symbol, to art. When you look at a great painting, you immerse yourself in the painting and it makes you feel things, right? You're projecting your own feelings into that. Did you ever see a Salvador Dali painting? Salvador Dali was a strange guy, but a very interesting artist. He's got that great painting of the clock dripping time. There's a Salvador Museum in St. Petersburg, I believe, Florida. It's important to open up yourself to all these experiences, all these images, all these books when you're reading and thinking about putting meaning into your own life. You can't live in a shell. You can't just live. I mean, you could, but what good is that, right? Because what love's got to do with it is everything. Love has everything to do with it, or the meaning of life. When a cat ignores you, it makes you feel, well, maybe the cat isn't different to me. And when a dog greets you, he's wagging his tail. Oh, he loves me. No, he's just instinctively acting towards you, towards seeing you in his own doggy way. The dog is responding to conditioning, familiarity, routine expectation. There's a kid at the train station when his mother would get off the train, when my wife would be riding the train from downtown and I would park to pick her up. And that kid would just jump up and down whenever he spotted his mother getting off that train, he would just up and down in joy. And she would smile at him and he would smile at her, try to jump in her arms, but she was carrying her briefcase. They were so glad to see each other. Is that love? Or was that conditioning and familiarity? Well, it's partly both. But was her love different than his love, the child's love? Is a child's love different than an adult love? Of course it is. Of course it is. Right? The cat is just following his instinct rhythms. It's a rhythm. Projection is a human act. We project. I think she loves me. I think she really, really loves me. Remember The Mask? What's his face? They love me. They really, really love me. In The Mask, we're projecting. Of course, they're applauding, right, or whatever, and you interpret the applause as liking what you do. Or nodding. When a person nods at what you're saying, you feel a connection that they're really understanding you. Are they understanding you, or are they just nodding? This is complex talk. But emotion is us. It belongs to human beings. Well, Jimmy, I think you're wrong. I think animals do feel emotions. Be my guest. Think what you want. I'm saying that we have to figure out what's different about human beings and a dog and animals. We have to. Otherwise, we're just what? We just act like dogs, right? Do you act like a dog in heat? I don't think so. I've seen that when I was in college. Dogs in heat. Human beings in heat. It's not a nice picture. Emotion, the ability to think, makes us very, very different. To examine our own feelings. Animals do not examine their own feelings. We do. Animals feel pleasure, pain, fear, comfort, but that's not the same as love or hate. Love involves memory, commitment, emotional resonance. I can give you a list, but it's really the will to care. Your act of your will. You say to yourself, I care. I truly care about this person. Or even, can you care about a thing, Jimmy? Of course you can. But the thing will not care about you. The thing can't care. The animal can't care. Feel comfort. You're the one. You have the will to care or not care. It's a rational decision. It's a conscious decision. Do you understand that? Do you? Hate involves judgment, resentment, and a moral outrage, but it too, hate like love, is a conscious decision. Well, I can't control my hate, Jim, right? Well, that's your problem, right? Because hate is a conscious decision, believe it or not. True hate. I'm not talking about, I hate that meal. I hate that guy. I hate that guy. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, true love and true hate, I really, really do. That's a conscious decision. I invite you to email me if you disagree with me. These two emotions require self-reflection, awareness, and an understanding that animals don't possess this. They don't. So how does that apply to the Canterbury Tales? Well, let's talk about that. It helps separate what human love stories are, even the vulgar and brutal ones. The Miller's Tale, for example, and the Reeve's Tale. Do you remember those tales? Remember the Miller tells a story, the Reeve tells a story. They're narrated, of course, through the anonymous narrator, but that's the point. They're stories. And only human beings tell stories, right? You haven't sat down with your dog and said, tell me a story. And if you read to your dog or tell your dog a story, I assure you the dog is not understanding. Not understanding. But that's the point, isn't it? We tell the stories to explain, excuse, elevate our urges. Animals just act. We narrate. We justify. We twist. We reshape what we've done. Oh, I shouldn't have done that, so maybe I'll say it this way. You understand? We give narrative layers to what we do, and that separates us. And think about a smile, like I mentioned. Only human beings smile. Not just with our mouths, but with our minds. You understand this? Smiling is a human thing. It's a performance, a gift, a signal. Sometimes the smile means I love you. Sometimes it means don't hurt me. Sometimes it means I know exactly what you did. It's still a smile. You understand? I love you. Smile. I love you. I know exactly what you did. You're still smiling, but there's a difference, a slight difference. That's where when people say you've got 360 emotions, it's really the movement of your facial expression. There are so many variations of a facial expression. It's unbelievable. That's what you should Google and study. So let's go back to love. Here's what some people say about love. It's a reaction of the brain when the brain is releasing high levels of dopamine. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're all chemicals, right? Of course we are. But don't believe that for an instant that you're just chemicals. Chemicals are involved, but I believe you can control your chemicals. You can certainly control what you intake, right? So you can certainly control your reaction to events. So high dopamine is associated with love, not the same as hate. Both love and hate produce intense feelings and activate some of the same areas, but they're different emotions, or are they? I don't believe they are different. They achieve true hate, true love, achieve the same intensity as each one does. For example, love is blind. Have you heard that? Well, it means that when you're really in love, you don't see many things around you. Do you understand that? When you hate, the same thing happens. You don't see things around you. These are very powerful emotions, and they're at the root of every Canterbury tale. You just got to watch for them. And while we can identify with the fact that we are, after all, chemical reactions, let me quote another song in our discussion about love. Well, Jimmy, this is a long wind-up. When are you going to get to the Canterbury Tales? Very shortly. Thanks for asking. Is that all there is? Have you heard that song? Google it, listen to it by the great Peggy Lee, a great jazz singer. This kind of disillusionment, just like Tina Turner's What's Love Got to Do with It? These lyrics express disillusionment. I'm going to read a little bit here. I remember when I was a little girl, our house caught on fire. I'll never forget that. Again, you got to listen to Peggy Lee sing it. I forget the look on my father's face as he gathered me up in his arms and raced through the burning building out to the pavement where I stood shivering in my pajamas and watched the whole world go up in flames. And when it was over, I said to myself, is that all there is to a fire? Is that all there is? This is the refrain here. Is that all there is? Is that all there is, my friends? Then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball, if that's all there is. Sorry for the singing. But is that all there is? Then there's another refrain. When she was 12 years old, she goes to the circus. Same thing. Is that all there is? And then she falls in love with a wonderful boy. They take long walks. We were very much in love. Then one day he went away and I thought I'd die, but I didn't. And when I didn't, I said, is that all there is to love? Is that all there is? Is that all there is? My friends, I'm not ready for the final disappointment. Is that all there is? Let's break out the booze. It's a sad, sad song. And what I mean by not unusual is that you can find examples of this kind of disillusionment. In other words, everything sucks, so we might as well just drink, right? You can find that in the Bible, Ecclesiastes, right? By the way, we should be reading the Bible on this website if we haven't already. Make a note, Jimmy. And then I commended mirth because a man hath no better thing under the sun than to eat and to drink and to be merry. That's a devastating thought, isn't it? Isaiah 22:13, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. And even before the Bible, in Epicureanism, which was a philosophy, Epicurus, which centered on how to be happy, moderate, sustainable pleasure, state of tranquility, right? Just eat and drink, for tomorrow you die. That's Epicurean, right? Key aspects, simple pleasures, blah, 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 minimizing fear of death and the gods, and lead a content. Marcus Aurelius, which is on this website, is a Stoic philosophy and important to read. So let's wrap up the love discussion and whip up to the tales. Love and hate in The Knight's Tale. It's emotional love. The woman never knows about the knight's love until the end. Examine it closely. Miller's Tale. No love, no emotional love, strictly passionate love. Reeves' Tale. Strictly passion, no emotional love. Uses sex as a weapon. Prioress's Tale, love of God, but hate. on the emotional and anti-Semitism, hate. Sir Topaz, emotional nonsense. That's the narrator's tale. You should read it. Nun's priest tale, animals with distinct human characteristic. Remember that? Chanticleer, right? Wife of Bath, emotional and physical love, 5 husbands. Friar's tale, superficial love of money. Summoner's tale, not about love per se, but morality, about begging. Merchant's tale, passionate love at a superficial level. Franklin's tale, emotional love at its best. And the partner's tale, it's not really about love, more morality, about 3 guys looking for death. And love, which may turn to hate. So, rich tapestry. Ready? Now we're going to review pilgrim by pilgrim, and we're going to talk about these pilgrims and love. Any questions? Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Pardon me, I just took a sip of coffee. Not that I need it. Every pilgrim now is going to have a brief profile from the narrator's prologue description, the core human trait that he has or she has, a modern parallel, so you can trace it to what's going on around you today, and then some reflections that by Jimmy on the tale itself, Jimmy's comments. Ready? The knight. The knight. He's noble, experienced, honorable, and serious. If you remember the description of the knight, right? His armor is not shiny like new armor. He's been through a lot of battles. He's a decorated veteran and civic leader, elder. So that's what you can compare him to today, the warriors of today. What's his core trait? Chivalric idealism, chivalry. He's a gentleman, theoretically. The Knight's Tale is a stately romance of honor, love, and fate, and a perfect mirror of his overview, elevated, orderly, and committed to courtly values at the time, even when these values suffocate real human feelings. Do you understand that? That how values can suffocate your human feeling? When a woman is promised in marriage to someone she doesn't love, she has to suffocate her human feelings. Well, Jimmy, that doesn't happen nowadays. Really? Are you that naive? So, my comments. Warriors are a different breed. They put duty, honor, and country ahead of everything. And in this tale, we have 2 knights who fall in love, but they never express their feelings to the woman who actually doesn't want to marry anyone. This is a one-sided relationship. And a relationship, by definition, means you have to have 2 things, 2 people. You can have a relationship with yourself, a relationship with someone else. You can have a relationship to an object. There's a great story by Hermann Hesse called Damien, where the kid's sitting on a rock, falls in love with a star. Every night he talks to the star, I love you, I love you. One night he decides I can reach the star, he jumps off the cliff, and he dies. Why? Because at the last moment he doubted. He doubted. It's a good story. And the word, maybe not a classic, but remember, when you're reading with Jimmy, we're reading classics. That doesn't mean you can't read elsewhere. You should read elsewhere. Even Jack Reacher novels, you should read. And the word relationship means 2 sides. So the knights actually are more in love with the concept of love or chivalry, aren't they? They're not really in love with Emily. Or are they? They may think they are. So then, because that tale mixes the gods stepping in. Wasn't that interesting when you read that with me? The gods step in and take over and do a little anticlimax. You don't remember? Go back and read it. They suffer silently many times. Communication is sometimes difficult. I'll give you an example of suffering silently or looking around an idealistic love. So we're at an event, and there's the event is over, and I go to the restroom before we go home, and there's a guy holding the wall. There's a guy holding the wall as he's going into the restroom, and his wife is guiding him in by, yeah, just keep going a little further. She's yelling at him through the open door because there was no door in the restroom. So I round the bend and I see him and I said, "Can I help you?" And he says, "I'm blind." I said, "Let me help you. What do you want to do? Urinal or stall?" He goes, "Urinal." He says, "Let me just put my hand on your shoulder, on your right shoulder. That's all a blind man needs." So he put his hand on my right shoulder. We walked around the bend. I said, "Do you want the lower one or a regular?" The regular is fine. So I guide him there, leave him there, do my business. And I come back. I said, "You ready?" He says, "Yeah." And I puts his hand again. He says, "Now I got to wash my hands." I said, "Let's go to the sink." So I guide him to the sink. And he says, "Just the right one, so I don't pee on myself." So I didn't pee myself. Now he's wearing a hat with a saber jet on the hat. This was a patriotic pops concert. And I recognize the saber jet because all kids my age, when we were younger, we loved war. So we studied jet fighters. Saber jets were used in Korean War. Subsequently, so he washes his hands and I give him the towels. I said, "They're even hard to find when you're not blind." And we start talking. And as I'm walking him out, we hit up a conversation. I said, "Did you fly saber jets?" He goes, "Oh, you saw my cap." He says, "Yeah, I couldn't find my regular cap." He says, "No, I actually, what did he say? He said he flew jets in Vietnam. But he said there's nothing like a Mustang motor from a Mustang airplane." He says, "It's a beautiful sound." "When did you go blind?" He said, "About 6 months ago." And I said, "What do you do?" He says, "I play Monopoly." How do you play Monopoly when you're blind? The reason I'm sharing that story with you is because sometimes people suffer silently. Here was a warrior, shot down, now blind. Can you imagine a more? But he was just taking it as it comes, taking life as it comes. Just an unbelievable example of really chivalry in this day and age. The prioress. She's pious on the surface, right? When we meet her, the modern parallel is a carefully curated humanitarian, a giver. A humanitarian cares about other people. She has a lot of manners. She never, when you meet her, she never drops food. She's always very dainty and caring. When a mouse gets caught in a trap, you remember, it drives her nuts. She just weeps. But her core trait is superficial compassion. There's not real compassion. "Well, how can you say that, Jimmy? I read the same tale with you." Well, read it again. Because her tale, remember what people tell you, the way they talk, what they talk about, reveals their own character too. And her tale is shockingly violent. You remember it? It's anti-Semitic beyond belief. It's wrapped in sugary religion. Sure, it's superficial. Her tale reveals the cruelty beneath the sentiment, the dangerous side of blind devotion. Ladies and gentlemen, some of us are suffer from blind devotion. What does that mean? Well, there's nothing wrong with being devoted, but when it's blind devotion, you better be careful who you're devoting yourself to. You just got to be careful. You understand that? You don't want to be blind. That's why it's important to test your hypothesis about what you believe. Anyway, what's curious about this is the prioress's love of God and her violent tale of murder and revenge. Do you remember that? Can you love a concept? Can you love a concept like that? She claims to be a prioress, a nun. She loves God, freedom. But look at her tale. Look at her tale. She describes in the prologue, no morsel of food fell from her lips, right? Small beads, and And yet, inscribed on her crown, or love conquers all. That's what's inscribed on her breast. Love conquers all. And yet her tale, right? You remember the tale? Go back and read the tale. It's horrible what they do to this kid. Horrible. The friar. Well, he's manipulative, sociable, morally compromised. He's a charming con man, right? That's the modern parallel. You know con men today, right? Think about it. They're around you all. They're around you. Well, what do you think, ladies and gentlemen, spam is? Trying to con you out of something, right? But this guy uses religion for gain. And in his friar's tale, he attacks corrupt summoners. The summoner was the guy who brought the person to the court for the fine and so on and so forth. It was religion at its most corrupt, perhaps, right? But he projects his own flaws to others. He mocks what he himself is. Remember projection, our discussion? So a friar with all of us, a gay dog and merry, who begged his district with a jolly air. No friar in all four orders could compare with him for gallantry his tongue was wooing. But his tale of the summoner sparks conflict within the pilgrims. Remember that? The summoner's tale is about a friar. Remember, they tell tales about each other because they get the miller and the reeve, right? The con man is telling a tale about a con man. And no wonder they don't like each other. Remember, his story is about the devil. But how the devil, by just being the devil, serves out justice to a summoner who loves only money. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great tale because in that tale I argue that the devil, while the devil is the devil, he's got to be the devil. And the devil is actually more fair in that story than the friar in that story. You understand? Go back and read it. The merchant. His profile, he's business-minded, and he's obsessed with profit, and he hides his debts. The modern parallel today is a financial speculator with a luxury facade. Do you envy people like that who have lots and lots of money? Appearances over truth is more important to this guy. So his tale is a cynical story about lust, deception, marital blindness, and reveals a bitterness within himself. The tale exposes his disillusionment. Is that all there is, right? Despite his polished appearance. Remember, this is a story about an older man marrying a younger woman and infidelity. What's love got to do with it? Nothing in this case. There is no love. Or is there? The old man can't believe his own eyes when he sees him up in a tree doing it. Love is blind comes to mind. And there's no deep affection here. Is there? Like some of the other tales have. The old man loves the young woman, but he's nervous because he's old, she's young, right? And she's a flirt. Not that there's anything wrong with this. Yet it shows the interaction of the gods in life itself, because the gods actually make the old guy, first of all, he's blind, then they give him his sight right at the exact moment she's doing it in the tree. And yet she convinces him that that's not true. How many of us don't believe our eyes? We see something, and then somebody else tells us, no, that's not what it is. That you didn't see that. This is what you saw. What? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Do you know people like that? Do you know the love story? Here's a love triangle story about my roommate in college. So my roommate fell in love with a girl who loved another guy, Charlie. So she was going to marry Charlie. So my roommate found out about it and said, Jimmy, I want you to help me go get her back from Charlie. They had already moved to Iowa to get married because I love her and she loves me. I said, how do you know she loves you? Because she told me, and she was crying when she left me for Charlie. I said, that doesn't sound right, but if you want me to do that, I'll do it. You want to help your roommate, right? So we drove down to Iowa to pick her up and her furniture. And she cried. And Charlie sat there smoking cigarettes while he watched while we took our furniture back in the U-Haul that we had done that. And they lived happily ever after. I was the godfather to one of their children. And I don't know, maybe happily ever after. I don't know. And I never knew what happened to Charlie because Jimmy lost sight. But that's what love does. It makes you think you do, and maybe you do. But I still don't know today what love, I don't know what if he loved her. Certainly Charlie loved her. He had her down there to marry her. You see how complicated it is? You see how complicated it is? The Franklin. Well, he's a generous, food-loving, status-seeking guy. Today's parallel is a high-end host, suburban elite, influencer with a dark agenda. The Franklin's tale is about mutual respect, voluntary generosity. It reflects aspiration to virtue, even if his life may fall short. He's trying to be better than he is. I don't know. This one is really one of the best love stories about love. This is about real love. You remember it? Commitment, promise, integrity. Man marries a woman, man goes away, woman gets hit on by another man, makes him promise to be his with a condition she figures is impossible, and when the impossible becomes real, the rock's disappearing, she is trapped. She tells her husband, he says, you gave him your word, you got to give yourself to him. I don't know. She tells the guy, okay, this is what my husband said, I got to do it. And he says, no, I'm going to let you off the hook. The magician who created the illusion shows up, give me my money. I created the rocks to go away. The guy tells him the story of what the woman's husband told her to do. And the magician says, okay, you don't owe me any money. What is love? What is marriage? How do these people define it? How do you define it? If you made a promise, what is commitment? What does giving your word mean? What does giving your word mean? Marriage used to mean for better or worse. I don't know what marriage means today. You can look at Pew, P-E-W research and show you today that many people don't know what the hell marriage is. And that's because they haven't defined it. They haven't thought about it. They don't know what the hell it is because they don't study it. They don't make it. You're the one who defines it. The parts of speech of the words, noun, pronouns, adjectives, right? A word isn't born a noun. A word isn't born an adjective. The way you use it in a sentence determines its part of speech. Let me repeat that. The way you use a word in a sentence determines its part of speech. Do you understand that? So you can use a word like marriage and love, but unless you define it, the way you define it, you have to define it. You can't let other people define it for you. That's crazy. It's really up to you to define your words, your commitment. What is obligation? Have you felt obligated? Do you feel an obligation, or do you run from your obligations? It's hard, isn't it? It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to keep your word. But I'll tell you, if you do keep your word, you sleep a lot better at night. The wife of Bath. This is one of the most interesting women in literature, by far. Married 5 times, has experience. She's really empowered. That's today's empowered women. A lot of women like that out there, empowered. Or are there? Or are there? What does that mean, empowered? Well, she believes in her own authority through life experiences, not whatever the law says. Not that she's above the law, but she believes her own experience helps her define what love, marriage are. Her tale is her thesis. Her prologue is one of the most excellent stories about a woman's journal and why she does what she does. This is one of the best stories about marriage and love. Best. Unlike the Franklin story, which we just talked about, this is from the woman's point of view, a strong woman who in the end loves the man who made her deaf. Can you imagine that scene? You remember that scene? He's reading to her about this and that and the other and how women should be subordinate, blah, blah, blah. She finally can't stand it, and she rips apart his book, and he whacks her against the head and makes her deaf, and then they end up in love. I'm not saying you got to do violence in order to love someone, but women are strong. Not physically as strong as men. Yeah, Jimmy, what are you talking? I'm just telling you, they're not. We're just constructed differently. But they have strong emotions. They have strong intellect. Right? Men and women are different. They're not bossy. Some are bossy. Some men are bossy. But strength of position in the character. I used to work for a female director of marketing, and I would often think about on my way after a client meeting at our offices, does the chair give her power, or does she give herself her power? In other words, when people come to sell her something, are they selling it to her or her position as the director of marketing? And inevitably, I always would conclude it's because of her position. And if you took the position away from the woman, she's just weak. She's weak. Well, Jimmy, you can't judge people. Well, sure I can. In fact, we made her the goddess of marketing. I worked for her for a long time because we would protect her from her own weakness. I never told her that. But that's what we did. That's what we did. That's what my company did. And that's really part of understanding what drives people's decisions when they tell you things. Why am I telling you this stuff? Why am I reading with Jimmy? Why am I analyzing the Canterbury Tales? Why am I doing this? You know why I'm doing this? Because you don't do it anymore. You don't do this anymore. In today's society, we just don't read the classics, and that's a sad thing. And you know why? Because the classics contain the knowledge of the ages that will save you time. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the only non-renewable resource in the damn world. Time. You will never get back this time you're spending with me. Why do you think I'm pouring out my analysis to you? Because I have this excess of time? No. It's because it's my way of giving back. I spent a lot of time thinking and reading, doing all this stuff in business over 30 years. And this has served me well. So I'm bringing it to you so it can serve you. Now you can, oh, Jimmy, I reject this. Fine. I love it. What is it? Adios. See ya. That's okay. I don't care. I'm giving it to the people who will listen to it and at least listen to it before they reject it. And really, ladies and gentlemen, you have to know the history of women in the world to grasp how significant this wife of Bath story is, written in the medieval times. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. When I was in college, I didn't realize that was many years ago. But a lot of time has passed, and it has gained in significance as the world changed. The miller. This is a loud, cruel, dishonest. He loves body humor, right? He loves it. He's a shock jock. He's a troublemaker. He baits people just to bait them, right? Aggression through vulgarity. The Miller's Tale is the exact opposite of the Knight's Tale, which is why it follows the Knight's Tale, right? It's an act of literary revenge filled with lust, trickery. Here, love is never beyond the physical aspect. It's just physical. Let's get physical. Another song. A very superficial way of looking at love. And remember, no commitment, nothing deep like the Knight's Tale. They're just using sex as a weapon in this. And if you forgot it, go back and reread it. Do you know people who use sex as a weapon? Crooked people who get smacked down themselves in their schemes. Is this a revenge story? Does the miller tell the story of a carpenter and then the carpenter tells the story of a miller? That's what's going on. Because here's the carpenter, the reeve. So he tells a story about a miller. which is his way of getting back at the Miller story. I'll show you, I'll tell you a story about a Miller. So when the Reeve tells his tale, it's about a Miller who is a crook. You remember that? He cheats, and as a result, he gets cheated upon as the scholars seduce his wife and daughter. And you'll say, well, Jimmy, where's the love? Where is the love in this? Well, it's really nowhere. So the tale is about humans who lack empathy, who lack love, and they see humans as numbers on a spreadsheet. You know anybody like that? You know anybody who sees humans as numbers on a spreadsheet without content? Empathy, the ability to understand and share feelings with others, of others. That's different than sympathy, but empathy is what makes us oddly human. With empathy, I can project into what another person is feeling. I can feel what they feel, right? With empathy, you can do that. Without it, you can't do it. Jimmy calls this the absence of love. So when I tell you love weaves its way as a thread throughout these tales, it does, and its absence is entirely noticeable in this tale. Corporations often have these people who lack empathy around them. Do you agree with that? Well, Jimmy, are you saying all corporations are what? Spreadsheet? They're a spreadsheet driven by profit? I'm saying love makes the world go round, right? But in corporation, it's not love, it's money. Have you ever fired anybody? Jimmy has. Have you ever fired anybody? Have you ever been fired? I've been fired 3 times. And firing is equivalent to shooting, killing somebody, because you kill them from their income, right? He no longer has income. First time I got fired, it was horrible. I got 3 jobs immediately the next day, part-time jobs. I needed income, right? I'm not going to go to mama. I did. It's a true story. I got fired a second time. It was easier. Third time, I never went back. I just started my own company. You learn. You learn. The summoner. He's an ugly guy. Lecherous, petty official. These are petty officials. They have the power of the pen. You ever stand in line and try to get something from a petty official, right? Part of the bureaucracy. When Jimmy graduated, he was going to be a teacher, and he had more hours in English than you needed. You needed like 6 or 8, and he had 24 semester hours. But he didn't have one course called library science. So when he applied to be a teacher in the city of Chicago, they told Jimmy, well, you're very well qualified, but you'll have to take a course in library science. You know, to get you need a half a semester credit in that. And I said, wait a minute. I was talking to a bureaucrat. I said, wait a minute. Library science sounds like they tell you how to use the library. Yes. I said, well, I've got an A average in my English courses. Can you see it there in my documentation? You know, straight A's. I was a smart guy and by that time. I said, I think I know how to use the library. Sorry, we can give you a temporary teaching certificate, but to get the full-time teaching certificate, you'd have to go back and take this course. I said, okay, thanks. And I never did it. I just started teaching in the private schools. I did that for 10 years before going into business. However, that's what we're talking about. Petty people who have petty power. So the Summoner's Tale contains a friar whose sole purpose is begging. And you remember, this is the one where the guy farts in the friar's hand. I should have farted in that bureaucrat's hand. Do you know anyone who is greedy, who keeps coming back for their handout? You know, they love money more than anything. Do you know anybody like that? The accumulation of things is interesting to me. How many things do you really need? Jimmy knew a guy who had a lot of cars, expensive cars, toys. You can't have enough toys, this guy told me one time. You can't have enough toys, Jim. Well, the problem with toys is that you only have so much time to play with toys. And if you're playing with toys all the time, what are you really learning? Let me tell you a story about a guy who loved his Bentley. So he loved his Bentley. I didn't know what a Bentley was. Okay, when I was at a meeting and someone said, "Yeah, Jimmy's got a Bentley," and I go, "What? What's a Bentley?" And I got out of that meeting and I called my buddy, who was very wise, and I said, "Tom, what's a Bentley?" He goes, "About $250,000." I said, "Well, I don't have a Bentley." So I met the guy who had the Bentley. I struck up a friendship with him. He was a CFO of a company, and he would take me to the club, quote unquote, for lunch. And one day, he had his Bentley there, and he came out. We came out from the lunch. He said, "I drove the Bentley today. Want to see it?" I said, "Of course," because I never saw a Bentley. So he goes to the Bentley and he starts stroking the fender of the Bentley. And he says, "I love this car. I love this car," with deep emotion. Then he opens the car, sits down, and starts crying. And I'm thinking, whoa, whoa, what's love got to do with it? No, I didn't think that, but I'm thinking, what's going on here? And he starts sobbing. And I said, "Are you all right?" And he tells me the story about how he is now distancing from his son. His son doesn't understand him. He doesn't understand his son. His son is, out of college just now, but they're having a split and he's just sobbing. So I said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you, but people grow out of this." And I told him a story. Remember, I told you human beings like stories, right? I told him a story about a guy I worked for when I was fired for the first time. He had a son, and he was distant from his son for 10 years until they finally, kissed and made up. They came back together because you have to grow sometimes through life and go through certain experiences before you realize what you have or what you don't have. You have to go through certain experiences. So he stopped, and he left. And I thought, well, so much for loving the Bentley. I to me, it was an interesting moment because a man crying in front of another man doesn't happen every day. So empathy, which I have, told me, listen to the guy I did. And until many years later, we're no longer friends because of a different philosophy. But that's another story. The partner. Effeminate sells fake relics. The televangelist who believes his own lies. That's today's equivalent. The partner's tale is brilliant expose of greed, right? Who openly are corrupt. You remember that this story is about three young men who hear that death killed one of their friends, and then they go looking for death. And they end up killing each other because they all get greedy. Love of money. Love of money. Do you know con men like this? Do you know con men? Have you ever been fooled into believing something that wasn't really true? Have you ever been fooled into believing something that wasn't true? The beauty of these tales is that you really get to see into the minds of these people who, like Dostoevsky says, are more real than real life itself, right? The characters, because you never really know what's going on inside a person's head, do you? You don't. I think by now you can see what's going on in my head. I want to give you everything I've got from these great classic pieces of literature. That's what I want to do. It's not a con job. I'm trying to help you understand that you've got one life to lead, and it's better to surround yourself as a brother, Christian brother once told me. So I almost slipped and told you who it was, and then you may trace who I am. Not that you don't know who I am, but surround yourself with the best. Life is short. Don't always read crap. Don't always watch sports. Surround yourself with the best. Try to help other people. I'll tell you about a con man who sold insurance situation and encountered with the roof. Let me tell you a story of a con man with an insurance situation. So the basic con man was basically selling me a life insurance. That's not with the roof. Sorry. Let me delete that. He took out a loan on life insurance. And he basically said, and he took out a loan on my life insurance, and the paper showed up one day that, you've borrowed money, here's the contract. And he forged my name. So I met him. His name was Tony. I said, Tony, what did you do? And he said, you don't know. I was desperate. I said, but you forged my name. You forged it, right? I trusted you. I trusted you. So I made him sign a paper, what he did. And I said, I'm going to keep this. If you give me back the money by Monday, I won't turn this in. If you don't give me back the money, I'm going to turn it in and you're going to jail. So he gave me back the money and that was that. And I never saw him again. So you trust people. You trust people. And sometimes, yes, you get burned. But ladies and gentlemen, that's part of living. So just pick up your pants and just keep moving, Just keep moving. What are you going to do? Well, I got to get revenge. No, do you really? Do you really? Then Confucius says dig 2 graves, right? One for yourself and one for the person you're going to get revenge on. Sir Topaz is a crazy one. It's about the anonymous narrator. A modern parallel is a rambling speaker. He just talks and talks and talks and talks. Have you met people like that who can't shut up? Well, it's you, Jimmy. No. You can turn me off. You don't have to listen to me. So this tale is really the only one where we get to see the anonymous narrator up close. It's a wonderful tale because we get to see the anonymous narrator, right? The host even interrupts him in disgust and says, shut up, I can't take it anymore. So read the tale for yourself. It's a wonderful story. And these characters, ladies and gentlemen, this is really the essence of the tapestry of life. You understand? So these tales, they're more credible, they're more vivid than real life. You're going to meet people in real life that don't compare to what the richness of what Chaucer gave us through his anonymous narrator. Just read them with me. Well, Jimmy, they're hard to read. It's like poetry. Of course they're poetry because they rhyme. But read them and think about them, please. The nun's priest. Well, he's accompanying the prioress, and we talked about her, and he's the underutilized talent, right? The assistant who turns out to be the most interesting speaker. In his tale, it's about Chanticleer, the rooster. You remember that? Remember the rooster? Chanticleer? So such a good singer. There's a lot of animal stories, like Orwell's Animal Farm. And by the way, as I'm paging through this, you can pause me and read what I wrote if you want to. I'm trying to summarize it because we've been going pretty long. Animal Farm, great story. But in this, Chanticleer, the rooster, is vanity. He loves himself. He loves himself. His pride is what gets him in trouble. Do you know people who are in love with themselves? Narcissistic? Do you know that? When you pass a mirror, do you look at yourself? Oh. Sorry. Does that mean you love yourself? Or do you just want to make sure you don't have, as my wife would say, wipe your mouth? We were eating lunch today, and I shook the mustard and popped a cap of mustard, and it sprayed mustard. Fortunately, I only got it on the arm. What am I talking about? On airplanes, they always tell you, put your mask on first and then help others. Why is that? Well, because you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. You understand that, right? The friar was with us, a gay dog and a merry dog. Love your neighbor as yourself is the second greatest commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. Google tells us self-love is self-regard for your own well-being and happiness. What is narcissism? Well, it's excessive or erotic interest in yourself. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? That's a narcissistic comment, right? The witch from that wonderful fairy tale, right? So the question boils down to what is excessive? Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to have to define what excessive means. You know, the people like this, the marketing director story. This is I was talking to you about the marketing director a little earlier. So the reason I know what I know about it, because the person selling her stuff would come in and say, boy, you really got a nice outfit today. And she would buy instantly $10,000 worth of ads. It was just flattery. Flattery will do a lot of things to people, except for people who know when they're being flattered, right? What is the body Ross saying? You got his nose up his butt, right? Some people don't know that they have a nose up their butt because they're not aware of themselves. One guy told me once, you know why I like you? Because you don't want anything from me, and I don't want anything from you. Is that the best way to lead life? Not to want anything from someone? Or just to give yourself to someone? Across these tales, we find a full spectrum of human feeling. Some characters reacting instinctively, others morally, love and hate. They shape marriages, console children, friendships. Chaucer doesn't define it. He doesn't say love is this, hate is this, but he shows you. Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest difference in life is saying something and then showing something. Showing something is always more powerful. When you love someone and you say, I love you, or do you bring them flowers, or do you caress their hand? Showing will trump, right, saying every day of the week. That means talk, ladies and gentlemen, is cheap, which this isn't, because I'm showing you. I am actually showing you through words the analysis of the Canterbury Tales that you just read with me, or if you haven't read with me, you're going to read with me. And the beauty of a classic and an analysis like this is that you can go back and reread them again and again and again. So what's your story? You're on a pilgrimage. What's your story? Email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, and tell me your story. Or more importantly, tell me what you think about Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Thanks for being here. And I hope you have a great, great life, including feeling true. I'm using an adjective, love, and true hate. What do you mean, Jimmy? Well, Jimmy believes in the knowledge of opposites. So you can't really know love unless you know hate. I'm going to leave you with that thought. You can't know what yes means unless you know what no means. You can't know what one means unless you know what zero means. You understand? It's called the theory of opposites. Knowledge is comparison. And remember, the dogs ain't going to talk. You can't talk to your dog about this. You can talk to your dog about this, but he will not understand you. He'll just be happy you're talking to him, but he won't know a word you're saying. So think about these things. They're very important to your pilgrimage. We're all on a pilgrimage. And good luck. Thanks for listening.